A macro is a set of instructions written in the VBA coding language. This VBA code needs to be entered within a separate coding area called the VBA editor. In this lesson, we will cover two distinct topics that go hand in hand: learning to use the VBA editor and learning to write VBA code manually. To gain a solid understanding of the VBA editor, we need to understand how the various settings in the VBA editor will affect the way we write our code. And to start writing code, we need to understand how to navigate the VBA editor, which means one topic is not without the other. So I've decided to cover both topics at once. This is how we'll go about this lesson. First, we will explore the overall view of the VBA editor. Then, we will learn how to write VBA code in the VBA editor. And finally, we will customize the VBA editor for a better coding experience. This lesson is loaded with heaps of shortcuts, tips, and tricks. By the end, you will be completely comfortable around writing code within the VBA editor. The Visual Basic Editor, or VB Editor, or VBE, is a separate application within Excel that allows you to create and manage VBA code. The VBA editor is dependent on Excel. It will only run if Excel is running. However, it is a separate application in itself. And the VBA editor can be accessed via other applications that support VBA besides Excel. But for this video and the entire course, we will only focus on Excel. And for this lesson, I will recommend that you keep only one Excel workbook open. You can access the VBA editor by first going to the Developer tab. If you can't see this Developer tab, you can right-click on any tab, click on Customize the ribbon, and in the Excel Options dialog box, mark a check against Developer and click OK. You should now be able to see the Developer tab. Click on it, click on the Visual Basic button, and this brings up the VBA editor. Let's close the view for now by clicking on the Close button. The preferred way to access the VBA editor is by using the shortcut key Alt F11. To return to Excel, we can press Alt F11 again, or we can come down to the Excel icon in the Windows taskbar and click on the window with our Excel workbook. And let's go back to the VBA editor again, press Alt F11, or since it's already open now, we can come down to the taskbar and click on the VBA editor window. It is possible that your VBA editor view looks different than mine. Don't worry, in this video, we will talk through the setup and you can always align your view with mine if you want to. Let's talk through the various elements of the VBA editor. On the top, we have the menu, which is your standard Microsoft Office menu. Well, it's the old school standard menu. The design of the menu and the VBA editor itself hasn't changed at all in the last 20 years. And most of these menu options have shortcut keys and toolbar icons associated with them. Next, let's come down to the toolbars. These are similar to the quick access toolbar in Excel, and it allows us to access several menu options by clicking on these icons. You can hover over the icon to see what they represent. On my screen, we can only see the standard toolbar. I will recommend keeping the edit toolbar up here as well. To do that, we can click on View, go to Toolbars, and select Edit. The edit toolbar appears out here, but we can see that the icons have been grayed out. You can't really click on them, and that is because we need to open a code window to activate these edit icons. We'll talk about the code window shortly. In the top left section, we have the Project Explorer. The Project Explorer is designed as a tree diagram that lists all open workbooks and add-ins. I have docked it or fixed it on the left. You can always click on this gray header bar and drag and place it anywhere on the screen, but typically it's placed in the top left section. If you can't see this Project Explorer, you can go to View and click on Project Explorer or use the shortcut key Ctrl+R. Now let's talk through the tree structure that we see within the Project Explorer. At the very top is the VBA project. An Excel workbook can have only one VBA project, and the VBA project will store macros that we create within containers such as modules. If you have more than one Excel file open, you will be able to see multiple VBA projects here within the Project Explorer, one for each file. And these open files could also include add-ins or any hidden files such as the personal workbook. The VBA project has a nested structure. Below our project, we have a folder called Microsoft Excel Objects. It lists every worksheet or chart sheet contained within the workbook. In VBA, worksheets are objects. This is a concept that we'll explore later on in this course. And we can see one more object called this workbook. This refers to the workbook object. And we can collapse the VBA project by clicking on the minus icon and expand it again by clicking on the plus icon. And similarly, we can expand and collapse the folders within it as well. Later on, we will create a module to host our code. This module will sit within a separate folder within this VBA project. Let's come down to the properties window. The properties window displays all the properties of items within a VBA project. If you don't see the properties window, you can click on view and properties window or use the shortcut key F4. In the properties window, we can set or change various properties of items within the VBA project. And these items can be the ones that we see here within the Project Explorer, or they can relate to controls on a user form. Let's zone in on just the worksheet. So for example, against each worksheet, we can see two names. Both refer to the same worksheet. The second one here is the worksheet tab name. This is the same name as you would see against the worksheet tab in Excel. And the first name is the worksheet code name. Right now, it's the same as the worksheet tab name. However, we can change the code name if we want to by coming down to the properties window and amending its name property. So make sure that the right item is selected. Come down to the properties window. We want to edit the name property. Let's delete this. Naming rules for the name property within the properties window require that the name starts with an alphabet, can be alphanumeric with some special characters such as an underscore. It can't contain any spaces. There can be a maximum of 31 characters, and the name should not be the same as any keyword that's reserved or already used by VBA, such as the word sub. And I will recommend that we apply a standard prefix to any name that we create in VBA. For worksheets, I like to apply WS in front. We can call this worksheet WS test and tab out. And we can see up here that the code name has changed within the Project Explorer as well. I will recommend using the code name to refer to any worksheet within our code. We will explore this concept a bit later on. Next up is the image window. If you can't see the image window, go to View, click on Image window, or use the shortcut Ctrl+G. We can run and evaluate single lines of code within the image window, and we'll see this feature in action later on in this lesson. Next is the code window where we write our code. Every module, which is a container for code, will have its own code window. No code window is visible yet. That's because we need to create a module first. When we record a macro, VBA automatically creates a module for us and stores our code in it within a sub procedure. But if we want to manually write in our code, we need to manually create a module as well. Come to the Project Explorer, click on the project name, right click and go to Insert. And if you're working with just one workbook open, you can pretty much right click anywhere in the Project Explorer and go to Insert. Okay, let's pause here. When I talk about modules, I am referring to standard modules. There are 4 types of modules. First is the standard module, where we'll write most of our custom macros. We also have class modules, which allows us to build custom objects that we can use within our code. And we have user forms, which allows us to create an interactive form-like structure hosted by VBA in the backend. And there are object modules, which are associated with the sheets and the workbook. We can enter code within them as well, but these would relate to events such as run an automation when we open the workbook. And each of these 4 modules sits within their own dedicated folder under the VBA project. Object modules are automatically created within the Excel objects folder. So for example, let's create a worksheet, come to the VBA editor, and we can see that we have an object module associated with the sheet that we just created. On the other hand, standard modules, class modules, and user forms need to be inserted as we are about to do just now. Okay, so let's right click, go to Insert and insert a standard module. So we'll click on Module. A new folder Modules is created in the Project Explorer with a new module under it called Module 1. We can change the name of this module by clicking on it and changing its name down in the Properties window. The name of a module doesn't really affect the code. It's mostly to organize the modules folder, especially when we create multiple modules. But for practice, let's change the name of this module. Let's delete the default name. It will follow the same naming convention as for the sheet name property. But for a module, I will apply the prefix mod and we'll call this test module. Tab out. Notice the casing style I'm using. This is camel case. The first letter of the first word is in lowercase and the first letter of the rest of the words are in uppercase. And now let's come to the window that has been created in the center of our screen. This is the code window. Let's close it. We can also access it by right-clicking on the module and clicking on View Code, or by simply double-clicking on the module. And I had mentioned that Sheet and this workbook are also object modules and bring up their code window as well. But let's stick to the code window for our module. Let's double-click on the module name, and the properties window will tell us which object the current code window belongs to. Let's click into the code window, and we can see now that the icons on the edit toolbar are active. We can remove or delete a module if it's no longer required. Right-click on the module name in the Project Explorer and go to Remove. We'll be asked whether we want to export the module before removing it. We can click No, and the module is deleted. And on a side note, we could have exported the module out if we wanted to. We could do this separately as well by right-clicking on the module and go to Export File. And it will get exported out with a .pas extension. The idea here is that you could import this module into another project if you wanted to reuse some code. To import, right-click and click on Import. Okay, so far we have explored the overall view of the VBA editor. If you like, you can pause and adjust your view to match mine. Next, we will begin writing out some code in the code window.